Welcome to my live sketching tutorial of the bluefin tuna. And we are celebrating World Oceans Day today. So we're going to be sketching one of the fastest but also most endangered fish in the world, the bluefin tuna. So of course, as usual, we're going to first observe our fish and noticing its shape and that really torpedo-shaped body. And the fins, we're going to be drawing each of those fins and discussing them. And the operculum and eye and mouth. We'll be drawing each of these structures. So always first, we're going to look at the fish first. Next, we're going to measure the length of the fish in comparison to our convenient box that I've made for you here. So the length and the width of the fish. So making some various measurements here to make sure we're accurate. And then I'm going to draw a really light line to just indicate, a horizontal line indicating kind of going through the mouth to the tail that we will build the fish on top of. I'm going to draw the, indicate the depth of the fish here, what's called the body depth, which is the widest part of the fish. And then just really looking at that shape. The top is a little thinner than the bottom part because that's where the organs are. And just again, double checking our depth. And then we're going to start drawing that arch of the top of the fish. And where it ends on the right side of the body. Double checking always. And then the bottom part, and it's thicker than the top because of the internal organs. Just staying light and loose, and we're going to really get this accurate first because we can't go back afterwards. Once we start adding the fins, we need to have it really accurate. So this fish is really torpedo shaped, not like a goldfish. It's really torpedo shaped like other tunas and the other fast fish of the sea like marlins and sailfish, swordfish. So that torpedo shape is really important to accurately capture. Measure sort of where the mouth is. We're going to work on the mouth later. We're going to first firm up the body and add the fins first. Now I'm just erasing here a bit, just using this other eraser, simply because my mechanical pencil eraser is harder to replace. So I just have this special pencil that's just an eraser, which is kind of cool. You can even sharpen it. But nothing special about that. I'm just trying to save my mechanical pencil's eraser. And that narrowest part of the fish is called the least depth. So you're always kind of looking at that narrowest part versus the thickest part before you move on. Okay, now we're going to start looking at the fins and the tail and adding those. And then later on, we'll work on the head. So first I'm going to add the tail and going to notice that it's the same shape on the top and the bottom. And I'm going to notice where it ends compared to the box and how tall it is. This is called a lunate tail, a lunate shaped tail, from the word luna or lunar, meaning moon. And you can see it's kind of shaped like a first quarter moon. And that allows the fish to go very fast. And they beat that tail up to 30 times a second, I believe, in order to go so fast. They can swim up to 40 miles an hour. And so that's a very stiff tail, stiffened by strong fin rays. So we're just getting that lunar shape, that kind of C shape there in the back. Again, double checking or ground truthing, as I call it, widths and depths and heights. Looking at that least depth area and then the top part of the tail. This doesn't change shape much at all. Again, as opposed to something like a goldfish, whose tail can really change shape, but they swim very slowly in just a pond, whereas this fish that swims up to 40 miles an hour in the ocean has a very stiff tail that cannot be changed shape. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the other fins, talk about those and draw those in turn. First, we'll look at the dorsal fin. That's called the first dorsal fin. This fish species actually has two of them. And so I was just noticing where it started on the top of the fish and how long it is. It's basically a little bit of a triangle here. Now we are working from a photograph of a live fish, and so this fish is swimming, and those fins can really change shape depending on how they're swimming. And so the exact shape isn't so important because they can actually flatten it down completely. But here we have a triangular shape, and I'm drawing what's called the fin rays. And there are a certain number of those, and those are like cartilaginous spines that strengthen that fin and allow it to be stronger and stiffer for swimming so fast. So then I'm going to firm up that edge and those fin rays. And so each time I go over something, I'm becoming more confident in my outline, and so I'm drawing a little bit firmer with the pencil. Now we're going to add the second dorsal fin. That first dorsal fin can actually completely flatten into a groove that's alongside it. So when it's swimming very fast, it can be more aerodynamic or hydrodynamic. But this second dorsal fin is a little bit smaller and it doesn't really have a groove. And its shape can change as well depending on how it's swimming. So here it's kind of like a 90-degree angle, a little bit of a triangle. And it's got some fin rays as well, but they're not quite as strong. Now we're noticing these little spines, and those are called finlets. And these fish have between 7 and 10 of them. And they're just like these little triangles. They don't have any fin rays, but they're very sharp and cartilaginous, and they help to stabilize the fish from rolling left or right. And so I'm using my other eraser to kind of keep track of each one, else I'd lose track. And I use that whenever I have multiples of something. And so now I've got those, and I'm just going to strengthen those lines now of those little finlets. And on the ventral side of the fish, there are finlets as well, the same number. So we're just going to look at those. First, going to strengthen that line and just make sure it's as accurate as I want it to be before I start adding those finlets. I always kind of work from the inside out on a species. Drawing the core first and then the exterior. So here I'm drawing each finlet, counting it, noticing its width and its size. And then looking at that other fin there called an anal fin, and that's because it's right in front of the anus, or also known as the vent. And so I'm noticing where it is in relationship to that dorsal fin. So it inserts kind of at the back of where the second dorsal fin ends. And here, just looking at the size and shape. I'm noticing I did something a little bit wrong with that finlet. My anal fin's got to be a little wider here. So I'm just kind of fixing this, looking back and forth again, ground truthing, looking at my fish subject versus my photograph, and just noticing that anal fin had to be a little wider and those finlets a little smaller. We're always double checking. Now I'm gonna thicken up, make sure I've got this line of the ventral part of the fish correct before I add that other fin and his kind of chin region. Firm up that anal fin a little bit and add the fin rays. I forgot the fin rays. And so you can see those are a little bit more subtle. That first dorsal fin is the strongest fin rays and the others are smaller. Now this is called the pelvic fin that I'm adding, and it's actually the first fin that we're adding that's a paired fin. So there's two of those, but we can only see one right now and it's pretty flattened against the body. The other paired fin is this one I'm starting now, the pectoral fin. And it's kind of inserted a little bit in front of the top dorsal fin. So I'm always looking at structures in relationship to each other before I add them. And noticing where it is on the body, kind of a little bit lower than halfway down. And the length of it. And it's kind of hard to see because he's swimming fast, so it's kind of blurry, but it is sort of out from the body, so it's kind of a sort of flat triangle. And you can't really see the fin rays so much because you're really looking at it from the side. And then this other area that I'm indicating is sort of a groove that fin fits into, just like that top dorsal fin I said fits into a groove. When it's swimming very fast, it can flatten those to be more hydrodynamic. And so that's what I've added there. Now I'm looking at the operculum, and that's this kind of backward C-shaped structure that is in front of the paired pectoral fin. And of course, under that is the gills. And this fish has very efficient gills. And because they swim so fast, they have really high metabolism, they need to be able to use oxygen very quickly and take that oxygen in from the water. So that happens in the gills under the operculum. And now I'm adding a second circle, or half circle that is, and that's called the pre-operculum. That's just another kind of bony plate that you see. Now we're looking at the mouth and kind of these two sort of triangles and this negative shape of the open mouth, which is a triangle. This fish is a predator eating things like anchovies and herring and squid and eel. And it can swim very fast to both catch its prey as well as elude its predators. And there's very few things. It can basically outrun all but the fastest sharks and orcas and seals. So we're drawing the back side of the lower jaw there, and then the front side, because we can see into his mouth a little bit, and it's kind of shady in there. And that triangle on top that I've added is the maxilla, which is pretty much seen on all fish. It's a pretty obvious bone. So just firming up those lines now. And then looking at the eye. So the eye is kind of, behind. It's in that triangle of the forehead there. And again, comparing it to a goldfish, which is the exact opposite kind of fish. A goldfish has a real big bulging eye, but that wouldn't be very hydrodynamic. So the tuna, if you were looking at it straight on, you wouldn't see it bulging at all. That eye is very flattened within the body of the fish. And it's kind of a oval, almost triangle. So we're looking at that pretty accurately, trying to get that shape. The eye is the window of the soul, so we want to really spend some time getting that pretty accurate. Noticing the pupil. The pupil shape is different in different fish and different animals. Some animals it has a really interesting shape, like in reptiles and amphibians, but most other animals have a somewhat oval-shaped pupil. Right, now I'm just kind of looking at the whole fish again, just kind of double checking before I firm up my lines, just to see how accurate he is. I think he's pretty good, except the lower jaw could probably be a little thinner, but pretty close. Close enough for government work, as they used to say when I worked for the Park Service. Just looking at the whole fish a little bit more and kind of erasing some of my lines. Using this cool little pencil-like eraser, but you could use any eraser. And then I'm just going to firm up that line, and not necessarily exactly tracing over what I have, but maybe making a little bit of adjustments here and there. Doing those two dorsal fins and then the finlets. Double checking that least depth there, or the thinnest part of the fish. And firming up the tail fin, also known as the caudal fin. And those lower finlets, double checking those, firming them up. We've started with a very light pencil line and now pushing a little bit harder as we become more confident. Firming up that anal fin. Right in front of that anal fin is the anus, also known as the vent, which is where both reproductive products like sperm and eggs come out, as well as digestive products. And the paired pelvic fin, of which we only see one of there. Firming up the lower jaw and the operculum. And the gills are peeking out there a little bit, adding those just a little bit there underneath. Firming up the preoperculum. And the mouth area, the maxillary area. And the mouth, the far distant edge and the closer edge of the open lower mouth. And that maxillary bone, which is pretty obvious, that triangular bone, which is pretty obvious on most fish. And a little bit more emphasis to the eye, the window of the soul. And that pectoral fin, which again is kind of hard to see, especially in this photograph because he's swimming fast, but adding that groove a little bit that it can fit into so it's more streamlined. Now just looking around a little bit once more, cleaning some lines up before I move on. We could stop right here, but I'm just going to really quickly add some three-dimensional form now. You can see how beautiful this fish is, and you could spend a lot of time shading this fish with his three-dimensional form and his colors, but I'm just going to go over it really fast here. That's a whole other tutorial. And I've drawn that little keel area right there. That I didn't mention, but it's a little kind of like a finlet that sticks out horizontally. So just adding some shadowing. You can see that he's a really rich, beautiful dark blue on top. That's called counter shading, where they're darker on top so that predators looking at them from above see them just blended in with the bottom of the ocean. And predators looking at them from above see that lighter belly that blends in with the blue of the sky. I'm adding some of those, let's see, what was that? Now I'm behind. Anyway, firming everything up. I was adding some of those fin rays to that caudal fin. And now I'm adding the fin rays to the dorsal there. So anyway, this is just real quick showing a little bit of that shading on the fish. Well, I hope you liked this tutorial. Take care.